Hey folks, Renegade here, and welcome to another episode of Rain Makes Stuff. Today I'm gonna make Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil. Today I'm gonna make the one and only Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village. So I'm excited, let's get crafting! I'm still broke, so I'm still using hangers as my armatures. Luckily, this one will be fairly simple, since Lady Dimitrescu's lovely legs are hidden behind a flowy satin dress. Unfortunately, these hangers are coated in some kind of gloss finish, so it leaves a mess I have to clean afterward. After covering the armature in foil, I'll break out this thrifty clearance Sculpey I found at a local craft store. I found mixing it gives me a nice gray for her base color. And now for her...
Humongous hungalonganologongus.
Yeah, those. Let's blend them in quickly so I can go wash my eyes out with soap. It wouldn't be Lady D without a fair dose of cleavage, so we'll just bring out the D's in Lady D. Anyway, enough boobs. Let's get her some arms. I want to give her some attitude, so we'll do one hand on her hip and the other ready to slice up poor Ethan. I didn't realize just how many creases were in her dress until I had to blend in about 100 little clay noodles to her body. If I ever get the idea to sculpt a character with a really flowy dress again, please plan an intervention and save me from myself. Now for the age-old trick of blending small strips of clay in to serve as the edges of her neckline, which I'll repeat later for her sleeves. I'll also add some seams to match her dress design in the game as closely as possible before adding even more noodles for wrinkles in her sleeves. So many noodles. It's now time to make a hand that totally won't melt off later due to an oven accident that definitely won't happen at an undisclosed time in the future that I've already seen because I'm editing this video in the present. So we'll give her a hand. For now. And let's not forget to turn her other paddle into a real hand with fingers. I'm actually starting to become fond of making hands, but only because the last couple I've made turned out 50 times better than any hand I've ever drawn on paper. Upon looking at some screenshots from the game, I noticed she has a weird flappy fan thing on the back of her dress, so I guess we need to make that. Oh, and we need to get that nice butt wrinkle in the fabric while we're back here. There we go. Apparently, she also has a row of buttons up the back of her dress, so I'm beginning to hate this dress. I wasn't sure exactly how to make that gather on the front of her dress, so I'll start with a strip of clay and work out the details later with, yep, you guessed it, a bunch of noodles. I'll also try adding some of the bigger folds with literal folds of clay. Not the easiest approach, but it seems to have worked out pretty good so far. Now that I've put my fingerprints all over Lady D, I'll need to erase them with some isopropyl alcohol, or IPA for short. Once I've got her all smoothed out, it's time to make a head. I'll start with a ball of foil and add a layer of clay, then build up her face, starting with some indentions for her eyes, some additional clay for her cheekbones, and some tiny balls of clay for each individual eye. These will get blended in, and then I'll use some tiny noodles of clay for her eyelids while my camera decides not to focus on anything useful.
Flip.
Focus.
Will I have invisibility?
Focus.
Once I get her eyelids blended in, I'll add a bit of clay for her nose. also start her mouth with some extra clay, which I'll blend in to form her upper lip. I'm leaning toward a menacing smile for Lady Dimitrescu, which unfortunately means I'll actually have to sculpt teeth and smile lines this time. A recessed chin is definitely not one of Lady D's attributes, so we'll bulk that out before smoothing out everything with some more IPA. I've just realized that I've never actually sculpted a realistic ear before. If you remember, I definitely cut some corners with lynx ears last time, so I'm gonna do this one right. Now for some finishing touches, including individual teeth, some noodle eyebrows, and of course, Lady D's lovely locks. We'll just blend her head into her neck and move on to the necklace. I found some small metal beads for the two smaller strands of her necklace, and I'll make the larger beads as well as the pendant by hand out of clay before attaching everything with some thin craft wire. Next, I'll make the brim of her hat by rolling out a very thin sheet of clay and cutting it into a circle. It needs to not be flat, so I'll bake it on a ramekin and cut a hole in the center once it's cured before finally attaching it to her head and building up the dome of the hat with some clay. And now it's bedtime. So I came down the stairs this morning. I'll let you see what happened. So, yeah, her head fell off.
We got no food, we got no jobs, our pets' heads are falling off!
There it is. I guess that's what happens if I don't put a support rod. I think I'm gonna need a couple days. Yeah. Alright, after a few days of rest, I'm ready to fix this mess, which I'll do by impaling her head on a piece of hanger and throwing her back in the oven. Except the hat brim was apparently too thin to be baked again. Okay, this is fine. I'll remake the top of her hat and add the ribbon, but instead of clay, this time her brim is going to be made out of pieces of felt, because I know what happens when you coat felt in glue, and she won't need to go back in the oven. The texture won't be perfect, but at this point, I just want to never have to look at this sculpture again. For the base, I'll mix up some more concrete to make sure she's good and sturdy, as we really don't need any more accidents with this sculpture. While we wait for the concrete to finish curing, I'll coat her hat brim one more time in Mod Podge to try to reduce the amount of fuzz texture we get in the final piece. This was when I realized I forgot to make a rose brooch, so instead of looking up how to make tiny flowers out of clay, I'll just wing it and come up with my own method of cutting petals into a strip of clay, then rolling it up and floofing out the petals. I'm sure someone else has already come up with this, but I think I should get some kind of credit for not looking it up like a smart person would. Now that the roses and leaves are cured, I'll simply super glue them onto her dress where I'd like them. Now we can finally move on to a painting montage. Let's just start that over.